So I'm out today doing kind of a pre-trip tune-up on my new RIP9, and I figure I'd just shoot a little video and talk about the first couple weeks on this bike. It's also kind of a camera tune-up because I'm trying a new setup. I put the I'm using the Hero 7 with the gimbal, but I put a sock over the over the camera to kind of be a windscreen, and setting the mics on stereo. So I'm seeing if this camera setup works. If I publish this video, that means I'm somewhat satisfied with the way it turned out. So hopefully you're watching this with me. The RIP9. All right, let's talk about this bike. First of all, the adapter, the Topeak adapter, I put the video out there of how to use it. Once I figured out how to use the adapter, which, like I said in that video, is not super intuitive, it turned out to be just fine. And it's not a big deal to me at all that you have to use the adapter, even though it adds maybe 5 or 10 minutes to your initial setup time of the rear shot. This rib cage design on the RIP9 has proved to be totally worth it. This bike, just on the cross-country trails that I've used it on the first couple weeks, has been totally amazing as far as the stiffness. I can tell that when I hit the mountains later on this week, I'm gonna love the stiffness of this bike. So the frame is stiff, and also this 36 fork up front makes the bike so planted. You know, it's got the 44mm offset fork, and this bike is just so planted at speed. Now, someone put a comment that this bike is overkill for Florida. Totally agree. I did not buy this bike for Florida at all, even though I ride it here and I like riding it at trails that have drops and stuff, like at Santos. But I'm telling you, it's like the Stump Jumper. So the Stump Jumper 29, the new one, took me a while to get used to because it felt like a big, really big bike. Once I got used to it, I really enjoyed it. And since I was already used to that bike, and this is a big bike, but I didn't really have to spend a lot of time getting used to it since I'd spent time with the Stump Jumper. But if you're wanting to buy a bike for kind of cross-country trails, that's kind of your main gig, don't get this bike. This bike is not meant for cross-country trails. It's meant for fast, rough descents. And so you're gonna be you're just gonna feel a little frustrated on a big, long travel 29er on these kind of trails. Now, the only reason you would do it is if it's your one bike and you know you just live for the descents and you ride them, go make trips to the mountains. But you know, you're just not going to be near as fast as you would be on a shorter travel bike like the Jet 9 or my all-time favorite cross-country bike, the RKT9. If I wanted to totally, I mean, I have more fun on a cross-country bike on cross-country trails. That being said, this is still a fun bike. It's fun to just, when you get to a downhill section, just open it up. But you're gonna be, you know, kind of frustrated if you're trying to keep up with people on cross-country bikes. This is a 31-pound bike, 31 and a half to be exact, about what the Stump Jumper weighed. I took my Trance 29 out here a couple days ago, and I could tell that bike was more fun out here than this bike, and it's no surprise. Now, when the trail gets chunky, which we don't have at this system I'm on right now, but when the trail gets chunky, this bike holds its line probably better than any other bike I've ever ridden. The stiffness is incredible. And you know what? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm not really missing the carbon rims on this bike. These Stans flow wheels, even though they're heavier, are plenty stiff. And that's kind of the main quality I look for in a trail bike. Now, cross country, I want very light and stiff. And so it's not an option for me on a cross country bike. I have to have carbon rims. I have twice as much fun because of the way those carbon rims handle the corners. So generally I'm running the shock in the middle setting. It's a little bit more plush in the middle setting than the Trance 29. That Trance 29 really firms up in the middle setting. This one's to where I usually use it in the middle setting. The Trance, I usually keep that shock in the fully open setting. So the only issues I've had with this bike kind of started on the very first ride. Like 5 minutes into it, I started getting a noise in one of the pivots. I tightened up the pivot bolt. It silenced it for the most part, but it still kept surfacing a little bit. So I pulled the pivot bolt out this weekend, and one of the bearings was not moving. I was not happy about that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it, but I pulled the bearing cover off, put some Fillwood waterproof grease on, cleaned everything up real good, put some Loctite on the bolt, blue Loctite, tightened it to 15 Newton meters, and totally silent. So I've been riding for a little while today, and this bike has been silent. But the ride quality of this bike, I'm just super stoked to get up to the mountains. So make sure you check out that review of the mountains. All right, now I'm gonna hit some higher speed stuff here and get a little faster video going. A couple other things that I want to mention before I wrap up the video. The pedaling platform on this bike is excellent. That's what I love about Maestro and then Niner's CVA, is that you can, if you want to leave the bike in the fully open position, it's not that big of a deal, because when you push hard on the pedals, it'll firm up and give it a nice pedaling platform. I'll comment again on that, you know, later on the next review when I ride this bike up in the mountains and, you know, do 30-minute climbs. But so far I'm loving the suspension on this bike. So this bike is built to be longer, lower, slacker, all that you hear every day on bike reviews currently. But you know, there's a trade-off with that, because this bike is going to be superb at high speeds, but you do get a lower bottom bracket, which means you get more pedal strikes. And I get more pedal strikes on this bike than I did on the Stump Jumper, because the Stump Jumper had 170mm crank arms. This has 175. If I had to build this bike from scratch, I would put 170s on it for me. Also more pedal strikes than the Giant Trance, because that bike has less travel. But like I said, the trade-off is a lower center of gravity, especially with the shock being so low in the bike. And that's another trade-off, because the lever to change the pedaling platform, change the compression damping, is lower and it's harder to reach. But I kind of found that to be the same on my Trance too. So it's just these vertical shocks puts that compression damping knob pretty low. What else? This is minor, but one thing I really appreciate about this bike is quick release axles. You know, when the axles came out a few years ago where you had to use an Allen wrench, I was like, oh, that's cool, you know, you don't bash it on the rocks. But then you throw the bike in a work stand and you're like, oh yeah, I gotta go get the Allen wrench. And after that happens over and over again, it's like, man, I miss quick releases. So thank you, Niner, for putting quick releases on this bike. Makes it a lot easier. Something else that I want to add, and then I'll wrap up the video, is going back to the handling of the bike at slow speed. So a bike like this that feels pretty lethargic at low speeds does really come alive at high speeds. And if this bike felt really good at slow speeds, it would feel like crap at high speeds, especially when you're going over rough stuff. So there's no perfect bike that's perfect in every situation, but you don't buy this bike to be super snappy at cross-country speeds. So you just got to keep that in mind. Any long travel 29er today is going to be the same way. My GoPro Karma Grip battery died on the trail, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I just wanted to do kind of a ride-along video talking about my first impressions of the bike. Stay tuned to the channel because I'll be posting some mountain riding reviews in a week or so and really put this bike to the test. Thanks for watching.